And we're back. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in at 1 o'clock Pacific time here with the Dragonchain team. And I am doubly blessed and very lucky to have two guests, and we're going to talk about a number of things going on in the community. We have Mayor Lynne Robinson of Bellevue and Arry, chair of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, entrepreneur extraordinaire, multi-time founder of a number of companies here in the area. So I want to get right into it and have both of you talk a little bit about yourselves and your background and how we got here.
Okay, first of all, where are you looking when you're talking?
I have no idea. I look just
Camera?
sort of over there.
Camera.
Oh, there's the camera.
Oh, okay, great. So, I'm Lynne Robinson. I've been on the city council for 6 years, 6.5 years, and I came from a healthcare background, but originally I was taking computer science classes back in the 70s.
Wow.
I was the only woman in my class.
Awesome.
And my claim to fame is that my best program that I wrote was What Shall I Wear Today?
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Versus all the mathematical programs that everybody else
It's
created.
practical.
I thought so.
Yeah.
User friendly. So anyway, I've really got a passion for supporting the entrepreneurs in our town. You know, it really feeds into the innovation atmosphere of our city, and it attracts large companies when you have all these brilliant minds and ideas coming
Right.
around. And so I do everything I can to support that and to get events at City Hall and to meet the new companies and all of the people coming into town.
Wonderful. Arry, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you're doing today.
Well, I've now dipped a little bit more onto the public side, so working with government and policymakers and educating folks about this process. And I think what I've taken away over this past year is that it's really important for those in the private sector, and especially those in the technology sector, to kind of, we've already had that time to mature. So now it's time for us to engage with the communities that we thrive and live in and share. And you know, the idea of together we rise, it's really important that we build these private-public partnerships. And we have a great working relationship with Lynne, and really thankful for all that she's done to support the community. So more of this to come, I hope.
Fantastic. Well, so tell us, you're not by nature the technologist, you're in healthcare. Why are you so passionate about blockchain? What's been so fascinating? You've really jumped in with both feet.
Well, for me, it's really the missing link for a lot of things. There's so many things we can't do due to privacy issues. So like with healthcare, with HIPAA. And it's so hard to share information. It's so hard to retain the privacy of individuals and yet disclose the needed information that they have to do good work on you. I think healthcare, to me, is a perfect example of that. Wouldn't it be great if you could just see your doctor and he already knows every medication you've ever had, every reaction you've ever had, every allergy you already have, and any contraindication to any treatment he might recommend, instead of sitting there for an hour before your treatment filling out this form that is based on your memory.
Right.
And that's what he's working off of. So I really do think that if we can reduce the amount of people that are between the patient and the provider, whether it's for treatment purposes or for billing purposes, and I think it's going to streamline medical practice, make it more effective, make better treatment outcomes, and make it cost effective and be better for everybody.
Interesting. That's really great. So Arry, you've worked a lot in the private sector. How do you see bridging that? Because this is a great bridge, right? That we've got both of you here to talk about it. So what have you seen in the last, how long have you been working in blockchain locally?
Locally since about 2016, so a handful of years, but I also feel like because the community is so open arms and sharing of knowledge, it's really easy to onboard. You don't have to be a technologist to learn about blockchain and this world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a few years.
So how much of that have you seen the startup type initiatives that Lynne is talking about, that companies are trying to solve those problems, and the types of business that they're getting into versus the technology? Obviously here at Dragonchain we're building the underlying enabling platform. What are you seeing on the business side?
On the business side, well, I think we're seeing a lot of, let's say, I want to take a different approach to
Okay.
it. So let's see, I think in order for a business to thrive or an entrepreneur to do well, you have to solve problems, right?
Right.
And so how do we do these private-public partnerships is we have the experience, the entrepreneurs already in town. We already have the technologists who are building the infrastructure and the protocols and the platforms like Dragonchain. But we don't want to be going to go look for problems, right? And you already know about the problems because you're on the public side. You know what the city needs, what the state needs, what the people need. And so this is where a partnership really does make sense. And we need to have conversations, not just talking online, but meeting face to face and really talking heart to heart about how we really help people using this technology.
Mm-hmm. What's possible?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even realize that. But I think, the question to ask is what's the roadblock? Why isn't everybody just adopting this technology and running with it?
Maybe it's the human stuff. So change is really hard. It does seem really scary and really technical. There's been some bad PR, a lot of misinformation or disinformation out there around this technology and various emerging technologies. And so the only way to fight misinformation or fake news, right, is for community to come together and actually talk, like, oh, Lynne is a real person. And so when I hear information that does not seem like what I've seen in person, then, I'll give it a second thought and use critical thinking skills.
And that was a big part of getting this together as a live feed for us to do, is to really, a friend of mine has said that unless you control your own dialogue and you're out there talking to people, then somebody else will control the narrative for you. And what we've seen with Libra and other things is that people conflate the narrative between cryptocurrency and blockchain and what's really being done. And we heard at 11 o'clock from the CoinMe team about what's really going on with cryptocurrency. And I think that was important. But yeah, a lot of those roadblocks come from misinformation and getting it out. I mean, from the two of your perspective, and you and I have done a lot of work with the state legislature. What have been some of your takeaways? And it would be great to hear what you think we can do better, or how do we grow that and engage more with the city, and then maybe talk about some of your own initiatives.
Okay. So
Sorry.
Yeah.
You can tell we've rehearsed this really well.
So one of my big takeaways, because we just did that roadshow to
Right.
Olympia, is that our policymakers and their staff are far more educated than we realized. And also we did a roadshow with investors, angel investors, and VCs, and we also learned that they're far more educated than we realized also. So yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but the people that we're interested in talking to, the policymakers, their staff, investors, are doing their own due diligence and have already spent the time to learn about blockchain and Bitcoin and all this entire space. So that's really great. I was really, really happy about that. And so the questions that we got when we met with these investors and policymakers were really, really detailed. They're asking about wattage and electricity consumption
PUDs,
and
yeah.
mining and what's going to happen and talking about the future. The biggest takeaway for me is that we really need more community resources. So if a policymaker has a question, who do they go to? Do they call up their best friend that they know is doing some Bitcoin mining, or is there a more community resource that they can turn to where we can help point them to a group of experts or a group of experienced people to help them answer questions? And so that's something that we'll be building as the Cascadia Blockchain Council, building that resource center for the state and city.
Well, I'm just so impressed with what you just told me, because there's nothing more risk adverse than government.
Right.
And so to get out there, and I think the WTIA has done an excellent job of educating the layman as to what blockchain is, what it can do for you, and what kind of policies need to be implemented to make it work for everybody. So you've done a very good job of that. But my experience at the local level is very risk adverse, very unsure of what blockchain is, what it can do, and what the risks are. And so been a huge impasse. Bellevue's a very smart city. We have a lot of smart city technology, and it's quite impressive, and we just won an award last year for that. But you know, if you think about what we're already doing, we're just a step away from implementing blockchain into that. And it would be so exciting, and I think it would lower the costs of running the city. I think it'd be more efficient. I think it would increase the quality of life of the people who are benefiting from the technology, as well as the employees who are using it. So a lot of the things that we do right now are quite labor intensive, and I think it could be streamlined with that technology. So we just gotta get that pilot project going and prove that it can be done safely and successfusly. And once, it's not just Bellevue, there's really, if you go on the internet, there's really no star city in the United States that's using blockchain technology, and I think it's all for the same reason. So we just have to come up with that one pet project that's really going to shine.
Yeah, and lead the way for other cities to onboard and embrace that blueprint or playbook. Yeah.
And we're happy to be fire starters and find that one thing that's safe, that allows people to get started. We'll do demos of Eternal today, which is nothing more, well, you know, in many ways it's complicated, and then a simple thing is to take information like tweets and put them out onto the blockchain, store it. We'll see examples of Dragon Den. We'll have a special announcement around that where you've got media that you can put on and have consumer-to-consumer communications directly with the technology. And it would be great to...
so many applications to what we're doing.
A good way to fight fake news, it sounds like.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and there's so much misinformation out there. So, and we've talked about this a little bit. We've gone down and volunteered and said, hey, we're here for you. But maybe that's not the best way for us to approach politicians. If we want to come in and say, we can provide working sessions, whether it's state level, city level, anywhere, what do you think are the better ways for us to approach, or the other people in the private sector to engage?
I think there's just a lot of people who honestly aren't interested in this, you know, and you're just outside their bandwidth maybe. I think you got to find the people who are interested and run with them, and then get people who are interested involved in government. I mean, people like you, and I'm sure you know lots of people who would be very successful in creating policy that would be great for the community, great for everybody involved. And so we need to get people like you involved in making those decisions. I have a question for you though.
Yes.
So the city of Bellevue generates just a tremendous amount of data already. And so one good example of that is we do video analytics at all our major intersections where we identify using an algorithm, whether it's a car, a bus, a bike, a person, and we flag near misses. And so we can change an intersection before there's a fatality.
That's great.
So there's a lot of data generated there. How can blockchain come in and manage large bodies of data? I mean, that's one example of many data gathering devices that the city uses, and it's tough to process it, manage it, and implement programs.
And to prove that what you're saying is actually, useful information, because sometimes people will say, well, you don't have enough data points, you have this. So blockchain, in the way, all blockchains allow you to store data, and you can store them in different ways. Dragonchain is an example of, we talked about earlier, lets you take a business layer and write a program and then store the large data, so that video segment that shows traffic at different times of day, and store it for all time so that you know when it was taken with provenance, and it almost creates a chain of custody for police, Department of Transportation, civil engineers, policymakers. And then when you're going to citizens and asking them to vote on referendums or something else, or put out a bond to say, we need to change this lane configuration, or whatever the engineers say, you can prove without a doubt that at this time of day, every weekday at 12:34 p.m., is the busiest time for this intersection, and we are 16 times more likely, and I'm making up numbers, to have accidents. But you have that data that everyone can share and see amongst those departments, policymakers, and interested individuals, whether they're groups or citizens, to look at the same time. And that saves a tremendous amount of money. It also makes it more accessible to people because you can prove it without having to go to many departments and without someone in your organization and administration to have to manage and maintain it. So that cost
Right.
is removed from you.
And you can do that while maintaining privacy, because
Yes.
you don't need to know who the driver was, you don't need to know the license plate number. All you need to know is a red car almost hit a blue bike, and why was that? Was it, what was going on at that moment that caused that to happen?
Right. And there's, as you said, so many examples of all of that kind of rich data that's stored that needs to be out there for the public interest, and that the city can maintain at an extremely low cost, because the blockchain allows you to do that, and you don't need a record keeper to manage and maintain it. There may be some enrichment, but that could be a value-added service.
So you know what one of the most expensive things for government is?
What's that?
Public records requests.
Oh, wow.
So do you see blockchain
Oh
assisting
my
with
gosh.
that?
Public
Oh.
records request.
You want to start?
No,
No.
go.
Oh my gosh. Well, all of the information can be put onto the blockchain. It is written with finality, and then it is shared amongst multiple parties. And the data source itself can be outsourced and split and put onto common storage amongst private laptops and hard drives, and verified that the data hasn't been tampered with or altered. And those files, especially video, even in today's age, is pretty heavy and large, but you would then be able to access it as an individual citizen and learn about how that information is used, how things transact in that intersection. So there is an enormous amount of information that can be done. And I know that when we were preparing earlier for the Cascadia Innovation Corridor event, we were able to go to Will Saunders at the state level and get information, all the public record information about maritime, how much we import and export as a state by how much weather reports and all of that. So that is a huge cost savings. That should be a project that we get started on and get some groups involved with.
Or even marriage certificates. Like, I want to renew my passport right now, and I can't until because I have to change my name. I have to go get my marriage certificate. I have to go down to the city and get a certified copy of my marriage certificate to do my name change for my passport. Until then, I'm not traveling.
And that's a delay, and that costs you money, and it's maybe costing
Time.
someone else money, your time. Those types of things are easily accomplished on the blockchain because you then have a self-sovereign identity, you have information that is validated and assured by some city or state body or maybe someone else, licensing within the state for things like driver's licenses, marriage certificates, as you said.
Yeah.
Guns. What about, tell us more.
Well, I just think that would be a great way to have an unalterable record of somebody's gun history, and know how many purchases they've made, and maybe track where that gun has gone with the serial number.
Wow,
They sold it.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier today about luxury items, but for a gun and the license holder and being able to mix and match and say, this gun has passed through a lot of hands, and this person has had a lot of guns. Maybe we want to have a different conversation with them before we sell them firearms. So that is a very useful opportunity. And then this year we're going into the augmented IDs at the state level for TSA before you can fly. So that may be an initiative. I don't know if it would be at the city level, but certainly at the state level, to be able to handle all of that additional information, because I'm sure they've had to hire, it's not quite a Y2K type problem or a big change, but can't be cheap.
And don't know, when it comes to this sort of blockchain-enabled future, like the scenario that I often think about is your ID, and it's simple as going to the bar, right?
Yep.
So I want to go to the bar and I want to prove that I'm over 21 and eligible to have a cocktail. Today, I have to give my driver's license or my passport, and they get to see where my nationality is, where I was born, my date of birth, my address, all this
Your
information.
weight,
Yeah, all this
your eye
information.
color.
Yeah, they don't need to know. They just need to know, yes, she is eligible to be able to drink in this bar. And so if there's a way that we could put more controls on what sort of information is given, like with health records, yes, this person is eligible for a blood transfusion, or this person is eligible for
Right.
this medicine, but they don't really need to know all the other things, right? So I think there's a lot of AI, machine learning data processing that we can do on behalf of the humans to maintain that privacy, but also allowing them to be functional.
Well, you hit something. I'm going to ask you an unfair question. How are I always tell people when I'm setting them up, hospitals locally, how are they doing on their blood supply?
Oh.
I don't know.
And that is because if we took your point and said we could store everybody's blood type and then find these random people, so to speak, and say, hey, we're low on A positive or O negative blood in the hospitals, you would not have no answer to that. I mean, you've got a lot of data that you need to have. But then the hospitals, when they dip below that, could send out an automated email on behalf of the city and say, we need a blood drive today, because this is happening and it's happening in your neighborhood, and your neighbors or friends or family could
We
be.
have something like that already coming
Okay.
from the blood banks, but it doesn't have the reach
Right.
that it could have.
Mhm.
And I don't know how this would enhance the ability to reach, but that's something that the city is challenged with all the time, whether it's a public notice or a neighborhood issue that you want to educate people about. You know, we go through the process of doing the snail mail and the emails, and we do email alerts, but there's still people who are always left out of the loop for whatever reason.
To Arry's point, if that was on a blockchain style wallet and your blood type matched, it would just pop up and say, hey, in the city today,
FYI.
we're low on blood.
Yeah.
Just the same way you get amber or silver alerts
Yes.
for cars. Maybe it's a little bit less annoying, I know, than needs to wail, but a good indicator. And then other things, we need more volunteers for cleanup, or we're supposed to get snow this weekend. Unusual here in Seattle, Bellevue, that, you know, we've got, so this is great.
Please help the elderly. We have, you know, an elderly homes need
Shovel,
some extra
yeah, shovel
shovels.
the sidewalks.
Can I tell you something I'm really excited about?
Yes.
The potential for blockchain is equity crowdfunding.
Equity crowdfunding, yeah.
So the opportunity for somebody like me, who's not an accredited investor, to invest in a local startup
Yep.
instead of buying a lottery ticket. If you took every person who buys a lottery ticket every week and had them invest in a local startup that they're passionate about and have actually some equity
Mm-hmm.
that can grow, and the blockchain would allow the companies to sign up for
Yeah.
this process without divulging their entire business plan, which is
Mhm.
kind of what you have to do right now.
Yeah.
I think we're so close to being able to do that, and I would love to support the local startups in our community and take all the wealth that we have, the investor wealth that we have
Mhm.
here, invest it locally.
That would be great. No, I actually helped launch Canada's first equity crowdfunding company
I didn't
right in
know that.
Vancouver, and I started the paperwork for doing it here in the U.S. So let's talk offline and
Okay.
figure out how
I'm
we do
in.
this. You heard it here, another Dragonchain first, but because we're honored to have these amazing guests. So you had some other notes and points and things you wanted to talk
I kind of think I
through.
covered everything.
Okay.
No?
Anything about privacy that you want to say? CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, just went into effect at the beginning of the year. Any thoughts, comments? I know you and I have been working on privacy for a year now.
I think policies and guidelines and standards, it still needs a lot of work in how we think about it and define it as a society, as a human race, organization to organization. And so I would encourage everybody, consumers, people, non-technologists, to really take a step back and think about what we're doing every day. You're using your phone every day, you're using different apps every day, you're doing different transactions every day, and at what cost? It's not just the money that you're putting in to purchase something, but you're also giving up something more. So the more aware society is, the more together we can make the right policy decisions to help all of us.
Love it.
Right. And at 3 o'clock today, we're going to hear from Maya Cotton from Frost and Sullivan, who lives up in British Columbia, and she's going to talk about antitrust in big tech and a lot of these same issues. So she's seeing it at the enterprise level and how this comes together. So you want to tune in for that. That's going to be an amazing discussion. Any final thoughts that you want to wrap up? I mean, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel very privileged to have both of you here.
I just, I think about the equity aspects of blockchain.
Yeah.
And that's what really excites me about supporting it and implementing it. So thank you for all the good work you guys are doing. And thanks for having me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, just continue doing the great work that you do, building out the infrastructure for this awesome technology and all that it can potentially do. Thank you for your partnership and your support of the technology community. And we want to solve problems, so please let us know how we can help solve problems and work together to help people.